Ireland, one of Europe's most green and mysterious islands. Céad míle fáilte, 100,000 times welcome. Everyone who visits Ireland, this isolated island in the Atlantic Ocean, is given a very warm welcome. An ancient and colourful land. Stone monuments of the past indicate its dramatic history. And above all, there is the splendour of Ireland's natural landscape. Here there are the remains of several ancient cultures that date from the Ice Age to early Christian times, as well as wild coasts and remote rivers, plus a hectic city life. Dublin is the capital of the Irish Republic, a city of musicians, poets and dreamers. Also a financial centre. Its many old buildings indicate its long and dramatic past. Dublin was founded by the Vikings within a wonderful valley, where the River Liffey flows into the Atlantic Ocean. After the Vikings, the Normans conquered the city and ruled over it for 700 years. And under King Henry VIII, Dublin became the capital of what was then a British colony. Trinity College is Ireland's oldest and most venerable university. It was founded in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth I. Merrion Square consists of a number of fine old buildings and the famous Dublin Doors, impressive reminders of the golden 18th century. At Easter 1916, the Irish Republic was born. The General Post Office, a national sanctuary. Up until the 17th century, St. Stephen's Green was just an empty space. It was subsequently surrounded by Georgian houses and became the largest square in Europe. There's one thing that all Irishmen have in common: their insatiable thirst for Guinness. Thus, it is essential to visit the famous Guinness brewery. St. Patrick Cathedral is the largest church in Ireland. At 93 metres long, it's the longest medieval church in Ireland. Legend has it that St. Patrick baptised the first Christians here. The Dublinia tells the history of the city, from the invasion of the Anglo-Normans right up until the closure of the monasteries, a dramatic period. Today, Christchurch Cathedral is also part of the Church of Ireland. It was founded in 1038 by Donal, the first Bishop of Dublin. In the north of the city is Dublin's green lung, Phoenix Park. Covering more than 800 hectares, it's one of the largest parks in the world. Today, Kilmainham Jail is a national monument dedicated to Ireland's dramatic past, the so-called Freedom Fighters Prison. The Kilmainham district marks the beginning of the Grand Canal that travels around the south of Dublin in a semicircle. A fine example of the engineering skills of the 18th century. The former warehouse of Jameson's distillery now features a whisky factory. Here visitors can learn about the production of this remarkable spirit. Located on the south bank of the River Liffey, the city's current fashionable district with its narrow, paved streets derived its name from William Temple, who bought this plot of land in around 1600. Bursting with pubs and music, this most hospitable city is a wonderful combination of lively city life and infectious Irish blarney. Southwest of Dublin is Kildare, the heart of Ireland's horse racing. In 1902, the Irish national stud Tully House was founded here. Rich and eccentric Scottish brewery heir Colonel William Hall Walker had the idea of creating a unique horse breeding scheme that would be based upon astrological calculation. He purchased a small farm on the edge of the city, and numerous landscape gardeners were engaged to extend it. The fact that the Colonel became the most famous horse breeder in Europe was perhaps due to astrology. And each newborn foal was given its own horoscope. His success was indisputable. His horses won all of Ireland's classic races. He eventually gifted the stud to the British Crown, and it became a possession of the Irish government. The ruins of an old monastery church and a small cemetery are well tended to. A particularly special feature of this area are the Japanese gardens that were created between 1906 and 1910. The Japanese gardener Tasaida and his son Minoru introduced philosophic, religious and historic elements to the gardens. The Garden of Life symbolizes the development of man from birth to eternity, along with many of the dangers that may be encountered on the path to happiness and enlightenment. A miniature village and tea house carved from the rock of Mount Fuji complete the little creek, bridges and magical paths of this fascinating garden. It's hardly surprising that these old gardens have gained international fame and are one of the most beautiful Japanese gardens in Europe. The Wicklow Mountains are a natural paradise of mountains, swamps and lakes. Beautiful valleys and a fascinating mountain landscape to the south of Dublin. At weekends, this wonderful mountain world attracts thousands of city inhabitants who swarm here to enjoy the Garden of Ireland. Romantic roads lead through the mountains. They were laid by the British to help them hunt for the rebels that hid in the mountains. The climate of this remote region is influenced by the Gulf Stream, never too cold and always humid. However, sudden changes in the weather are common here. With romantic heathland, dreamy forests and meadows that shine light green, and pastures with grazing sheep. In the lower region, milk cows and large herds of sheep graze in the lush green meadows that flourish due to the good climate. Glendalough, the Valley of Two Lakes, is an old Irish monastery district, full of mystic atmosphere and fascinating charm. In around 570 AD, Holy Kevin appeared in this valley and founded a hermitage. It later became the monastery town of Glendalough. The romantic valley that Kevin had chosen due to its remoteness contained one of the largest spiritual settlements of the Middle Ages. What was tantamount to a university town of the early Middle Ages originated, and around 3,000 monks, scholars and students lived here. The monastery town was destroyed in 1398 by British troops, but the ruins are still impressive and evocative of a moving past. Wicklow is the capital of the province of the same name, and is also the region's centre of tourism. An amicable small town that is proud of its famous sons. Robert Halpin, who installed the first transatlantic cable from Valentia Island to Newfoundland. And some of those who fought for Ireland's independence, Holt, Byrne and Dwyer. The old prison has been restored and is now a popular visitor attraction. It gives a good insight into the hardships of prison life. Rich prisoners were able to pay for lessons for their children, but corrupt jailers had no mercy for the poor. They were locked in like animals. In most parts of Ireland, the rebellion ended in September 1798, but not in the district of Wicklow. Here, Michael Dwyer did not surrender until 1803. As the rebellion against the British failed, in spite of the help of French troops, most of the prisoners were transported to Australia on what were known as hell ships. However, the subsequent reform of the prison is also on display. An individual cell for each prisoner, with sitting rooms, kitchen, chapel and washrooms. In the Irish National Heritage Park, replicas of Ireland's cultural heritage have been lovingly constructed within a peaceful swamp area. In around 7000 BC, the first settlers arrived here. They were hunters and gatherers and used tools and weapons carved from stone, wood, and bones. Around 600 BC, numerous Celtic tribes conquered the country. Ring fortresses were typical residences of both the nobility and wealthy farmers. From the 5th century AD, the country was introduced to Christianity by Holy Patrick, a fact highlighted by a replica of an early Christian monastery complex. Since the Stone Age, artificial islands were created here, crannogs, huts covered with reed, a secure family dwelling. However, savage Viking tribes from Denmark invaded. And later, the Normans conquered a large part of the island and ruled here until the Tudor king Henry VIII made it a British colony. Wexford is situated in the southeast of the island, a busy provincial town at the mouth of the Slaney. The harbour has since silted up. Founded by the Vikings, the Normans later transformed it into a flourishing centre of trade. The town's typical alleys and buildings are a reminder of its prosperous past. The last remaining tower of the former fortification complex indicates how powerful this city once was. Nevertheless, Oliver Cromwell conquered it in 1649. Close to the tower are the ruins of Selskars Abbey. A noblewoman founded this abbey in honour of her husband, whom she thought had perished in the Crusades. But some years later he returned and discovered that his wife had committed herself to ecclesiastical vows. Saddened by this, he also dedicated himself to monastic life. Terrible things once took place here. Oliver Cromwell killed 5,000, and during the rebellion, British soldiers speared the town's inhabitants and threw them into the sea. In nearby Rosslare Harbour, car ferries arrive from France and Wales. In addition to the commercial traffic, the harbour is also the start and end point for many visitors to Ireland. Although this coastal region has long sandy beaches and idyllic bays, it is still off the tourist trail. Small boarding houses and hotels compete for the few tourists that come here. But the view across the harbour is not exactly inspiring. Ireland isn't famous as a paradise for bathers. But Rosslare does have a special attraction, the Yola Farmstead Folk Park, a well-laid-out area. Back to the Irish village life of the 18th century, to a time when the windmill made the arduous life of the farmer a little less strenuous. And typical farm animals, sheep, roosters and rabbits, living side by side. There are farmhouses, a church and a school. They provide a good insight into the daily life of bygone times. The people survived with the natural products provided by nature. They cultivated and harvested the land. The small town of New Ross was once an important harbour town, as it was strategically located on the banks of a river that flowed into the sea. However, it couldn't be reached from the sea. Today, the Dunbrody famine lies at anchor here. An authentic reconstruction of a passenger ship dating back to 1845. The original ship was built for the transportation of timber. However, several potato harvests were destroyed by a fungus, and this caused a devastating famine. So over 1 million people left Ireland with the hope of a new life elsewhere. The ship carried emigrants across the Atlantic, and on its return journey it carried timber. A good business for the owner. £3 for each of the ship's 176 passengers. Jerpoint Abbey near Thomastown dates back to the 12th century. It's one of the most beautiful Cistercian ruins in Ireland. It was founded in around 1160 by Donal Mac Gillapatrick, the King of Ossory, a small kingdom between Waterford and Kilkenny. The Cistercians built the monastery in characteristic style. One of the stone sarcophagi is said to contain the bones of Holy Nicolas, who was buried here by the Crusaders. Especially interesting is the filigree stonemasonry in the arcades. Each column is decorated with its own unique design. An enclosed corridor once connected the cloister to various courtyards and buildings. The monastery was occupied by monks for 4 centuries. The figures on the twin pillars are particularly beautiful. They depict bishops, knights and ladies, as well as imaginary beings. Kilkenny is one of the most beautiful towns in Ireland, and numerous historic buildings highlight the city's colourful past. Since the end of the 12th century, Kilkenny Castle, that is located close to the Nore River, has been the town's most prominent landmark. In 1391, the castle was acquired by the Butlers, an aristocratic family that influenced Kilkenny right up until the 20th century. Another attraction is the old town itself, with its colourful buildings and picturesque maze of tiny lanes that are ideal for a leisurely stroll. The city was founded by St. Canice, who in the 6th century had a monastery built close to the River Nore. Rothe House was built by the influential and wealthy merchant John Rothe. It served as both a business and a family residence. Kilkenny is not only famous for its exceptionally well-preserved historic monuments, but also for its local dark beer, Smithwick's, that's exported all over the world. Since the 13th century, the oldest part of the city has been dominated by a mighty cathedral. Unlike the buildings that date back to the city's early Christian epoch, the cathedral has retained most of its original medieval grandeur. Kilkenny is rightly called the jewel of the Irish Middle Ages. The Fethard town walls are one of the best preserved examples of how the people of bygone times fortified their cities. In those days, invasion was always a threat. Ireland was Christianized, the Vikings were defeated, and the British installed the Normans as governors. They erected fortresses and adapted to Irish customs and traditions. The British Tudor king Henry VIII also declared himself to be King of Ireland. He created various English settlements here and founded the Protestant Church of England. Conflict was inevitable. The Norman Irish upper classes were savagely driven out by the Catholics, and foreign rule meant harsh discrimination. Numerous important episodes of Irish history have taken place on the Rock of Cashel. Former mighty buildings sit majestically upon a limestone rock. Here kings were crowned and the clergy had its main seat, silent witnesses to the power of kings and medieval bishops. The national sanctuary of Ireland. Around 370 AD, the legendary King Cork is said to have founded the town of Cashel. He also had the first fortress built here. The ruins of Hoare Abbey lie at the foot of the fortress and are a reminder of the Cistercian monks who were highly influential. For centuries, the kings of Munster ruled from here. They constantly competed with the kings of Tara until Brian Bock was crowned as the first High King. The fortress later became the seat of the bishop. Ireland's church constitution was created here, and its main features are still valid today. Under the rule of the British, continental classicism was introduced to Ireland in the second half of the 17th century, and a new style of architecture originated here. The residences of the British aristocracy were built according to the architecture that was fashionable in England, a mixture of Renaissance and late Baroque. On the outside, modest, but within, much decoration and elegant comfort, an expression of wealth and self-confidence. Large entrance halls with open stairways and generous fireplaces, as well as wooden wainscoting, stucco work, marble and glass. Comfort was of prime importance in Victorian times. A road with magnificent views, the famous Ring of Berra, travels through a romantic coastal area. And at the beginning of the 19th century, it was well travelled by the aristocracy. The huge variety of almost subtropical-looking flora that is favoured by the Gulf Stream makes this journey a truly splendid experience. The name Ring of Berra indicates that it's possible to take a round trip on the peninsula. The roads, however, are narrow and full of bends. The landscape is wild and unspoiled. In every shade of green, and with small rivers and lakes, here the meaning of the word paradise has been redefined. It's a real fairy tale landscape, a natural work of art, a veritable rhapsody in green. And within these peaceful surroundings, sheep graze contentedly. It's a truly inspiring place, a land of myth and legend. Milk cows idly observe visitors, chewing the cud from dawn till dusk. Breathtaking views of rocky bays and the Atlantic coastline. This rainbow country flows into the distant horizons of the turbulent Irish Sea. The small town of Killarney has more hotels than anywhere else in Ireland apart from Dublin. It's well worth a visit. The most visited town in Ireland has no sights of its own. It's a starting point for sightseeing and has good facilities. Here, the holiday season lasts throughout the year. Many interesting shops, pubs and fine restaurants provide tourists with everything they need, whether it's for one day or several. A few narrow lanes with their old houses are reminiscent of the town's peaceful past, and horse carriages transport passengers to the nearby Killarney National Park. St Mary's Cathedral dates back to the middle of the 19th century, when the Earl of Kenmare invited guests here in order to hunt. The Dingle Peninsula in the southwest of Ireland is well known as one of the country's most scenic locations. It's also a region with a fascinating history. The 1,500 inhabitants of tiny Dingle Town have for generations been closely associated with the sea. Their forefathers were also fishermen. But for some years, Dingle has also had another attraction. In Dingle Town in 1984, a dolphin appeared just off the coast, and it accompanied the fishing boats into the harbour. thousands of visitors have been captivated by fungi. This former smuggler's halt is one of Ireland's many treasures. It's been popular for around 20 years or so. The peninsula has been inhabited for 6,000 years, so it's hardly surprising that the region is so rich in history. Dunbeg Fort. Archaeology has shown that it dates back to the 8th century BC. Close to Fachen is a large group of beehive huts, ancient circular buildings that date back to the last ice age. Sleehead Drive leads from Dingle Town to the small village of Ventry and the southernmost point of the peninsula. The road soon steepens. The lush green of the surrounding slopes accompanies us on our journey to a legendary pass. Bunratty Castle is close to Limerick and is the best-known preserved medieval fortress in Ireland. A window into the past with a very dramatic history. It's not a fortress in continental European style, but an imposing 3-story high castle with 4 corner towers and many well-preserved rooms. Bunratty Castle has lost none of its medieval character. It's almost as though its inhabitants still live here. In the past, a nobleman's household contained many servants, and an earl or clan leader had hundreds of domestic servants. There was always an abundance of food and drink, and travellers and their servants were given a hearty welcome. A sheltered courtyard was used for cooking for many hungry mouths. An adjoining historic park gives a good insight into life around 1900. A model village depicts a typical scene of daily life. Houses and shops along the village street have been lovingly replicated here. A living museum. World-famous art historian, collector and archaeologist John Hunt was responsible for this extraordinary open-air museum, the Craganoan Project. He had a Celtic settlement built here, an artificial island in a lake protected by a palisade. The foundations contain several layers of stone and tree trunks. The relics of early history look somewhat unspectacular today. The stone altars and burial places within the forests are hardly recognizable. Ring forts were the traditional form of settlement of early Christian times. Within the circular earth and stone walls, the inhabitants went about their daily work, cooking, making pottery, and creating various works of art. The most precious exhibit is protected by a glass pyramid. It's the boat in which Holy Brendan travelled from Ireland to North America. Tim Severin built a replica of this boat and followed Brendan's route. Napogue Castle was built in 1467 by Sean McNamara. He was a member of the local alliance of clans that were known as Dalcassians. In the past 500 years, the complex has undergone much transformation. Its various owners gradually extended the area and also recreated a wonderful garden based upon Middle European design. Cromwell's government occupied the castle for some time prior to it being taken over by the McNamaras. Due to financial problems, in 1800, Francis McNamara sold it to a Scottish family. Half a century later, they also suffered from financial difficulties, and in 1855 they sold it to Theobald Fitzwalter Butler. He continued further restoration, and during the struggle for independence, secret Republican meetings took place here. Later, Butler also sold it. The Andrews from Texas are the present owners. In the village of Quin, between Limerick and Ennis, are the ruins of the Franciscan monastery of Quin Abbey that dates back to 1402. The monks built their monastery within a Norman fortress that had been destroyed in 1286. It was protected by ancient fortress walls. At the beginning of the 17th century, the monks were driven out of their monastery. Yet one Franciscan monk lived there until 1820. Above all, it is the beautiful cloister and the gravestones of the McNamaras that stand amid the ruins of the church that have made this complex famous. With the introduction of Christianity, the monasteries developed into centers of teaching, education, and the creative arts. The ascetic way of life and a strictly regulated daily regime allowed little freedom. We follow the coast to the 8-kilometre-long cliffs of Moher and rock strata surrounded by the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. Sandstone and slate struggle against the relentless might of the sea. Here at sea level, it's not quite so threatening. When the weather's good, this is a popular place for a stroll. However, it's a totally different scene when the weather turns nasty. The next section of the coast is more spectacular. Steep rock walls plunge 200 meters into the sea below. Here, the coast is vertical. Over millions of years, the strong westerly winds and powerful surf have gradually gnawed away at this coast. The result is a thing of beauty. Shining green grass in contrast to dark rock walls, warmed by tropical currents and cooled down by the cold of winter. Various pathways lead to a watchtower that provides a fascinating view over the cliffs. The view is overwhelming, and David Lean's film Ryan's Daughter made these cliffs world famous. The Blackwater Railway travels through the Blackwater swamps where, with a surface area of 12,000 hectares, the turf is worked for the production of electricity. Following the last ice age, numerous small lakes originated in the middle of Ireland. Plants grew, but a lack of oxygen eventually destroyed them. So swamps originated, and the turf is now worked by the inhabitants of this region. Thin layers of the surface are removed. Next, the turf is dried out and piled up in fields. Turf has always been an important burning material, and since the middle of the 20th century, it has been worked with machines. From May until September, the turf is harvested, and after it's been broken down, it's transported on a small train to a power station. 75 tons on 40 trains each day. The River Shannon slowly winds its way through the romantic Midlands, a tranquil setting. Houseboats travel slowly on the blue-green water. There are several houseboats in the various tributaries and canals that lie close to the numerous small villages. The boats are extremely popular and are quite easy to maneuver. Of the 220 navigable kilometres of waterway, a number of locks must be negotiated. But the marvellous hostelries along the way make it all worthwhile. Located above the River Shannon is Clonmacnoise, a cultural highlight in this land of saints and scholars. Founded by Holy Kieran in the middle of the 6th century, this monastic settlement soon became an important centre. The impressive remains of 9 churches, 2 circular towers, and numerous high crosses highlight the former importance of this complex. The stone carvings on the gate are particularly interesting, and the Irish high crosses are extraordinary. They mark the monastery complex at each of the 4 points of the compass. A place of spiritual meetings, sermons, and above all, prayer. However, the monastery's wealth often caused it to be attacked. Until in 1552, Cromwell's soldiers finally turned Clonmacnoise into ashes. West of Tara Hill is the former fortress of the Irish High Kings, Trim Castle, Ireland's largest and most beautiful Norman fortress. Unfortunately, most of it was destroyed due to various battles between Cromwell and the Catholics. The Normans were masters of fortress construction. At first, they used wood. But due to its flammable nature, timber was replaced by stone as the most important building material. Hollywood discovered this spectacular scenery and used it in the film Braveheart. Although much of it has remained unspoiled, Ireland has undergone much change. It's a land of great natural beauty, healthy commercial success, and excellent hospitality. Ireland, a wild green island set in the wild Atlantic Ocean.